Our Channel 2 Action News coverage as no charges will be filed in the Rayshard Brooks case against officers Garrett Rolfe and Devin Brosnan. This after they revealed to us details in frame by frame video, really within fractions of seconds, about what occurred. There was so much information that occurred today that they shared with us, the information we hadn't really heard before in great detail. But it seems that the headline, according to prosecutor Skandalakis, was that the first shot was fired by Officer Rolfe, he said, when Brooks still had the taser pointed at Officer Rolfe and had already used the taser twice at that point. This according also to Danny Porter, who was brought in by Skandalakis to help out with this investigation and a possible prosecution. A special prosecutor in this case appointed by the state attorney general. He said based upon the law and the facts, the use of deadly force in this case was reasonable. Unfortunately, by Brooks's actions, this is what happened. So they are filing an administrative dismissal dismissing all the warrants. The special prosecutor says at one point, Rayshard Brooks lunged at the officers, overpowered them, took the taser, fired it at both officers and ran. And at different points in this confrontation, it could have been a DUI charge. It could have been aggravated assault. And then everything escalated. In the final moments, the special prosecutor says there was just 1 second between when Brooks fired the taser at Officer Garrett Rolfe that last time and when Rolfe shot back with a gun. The special prosecutor says Georgia law allows these officers to use deadly force in this situation. So we want to get reaction. We send it to our live Team 2 coverage across Metro Atlanta. Michael Seiden at the Wendy's, where it all happened 2 years ago. Richard Elliott is downtown looking at the legal questions here. Let's start with Dave Huddleston live in Clayton County, where this press conference just happened, Dave.
Yeah, a lot of information in this press conference. We went on for about an hour and a half where they went step by step on from the very beginning when Rayshard Brooks was asleep in that Wendy's drive-through all the way into the end of his life at that Wendy's parking lot, giving us an idea of frame by frame of the video and all of the interviews and all of the body cam videos showing us what had happened in that situation. They also wanted to remind us of the context of where this was happening in our state of our country. We just had the George Floyd situation. Ahmaud Arbery was shot and killed, and then now we're dealing with the Rayshard Brooks situation. Mr. Peter Skandalakis said that this was not a situation of a black man being profiled by white officers. That this was a separate incident that could have been avoided if Mr. Brooks would have abided by the officers and agreed to be arrested for that DUI charge that was the initial charge, but then it escalated, as you were mentioning out, Linda, to obstruction of officers, removal of a weapon, aggravated assault against an officer. All of those charges just from Rayshard Brooks not obeying the rules of the officer as they were trying to arrest him. This, of course, has been a case that we have been following for the last 2 years. I've called some sources within city government, the Fulton County Police Department, Atlanta Police Department, all are on standby, waiting in case something erupts from protests or for protesters that are out in the street. Officers for Atlanta are on 12-hour shift standby. Fulton County Sheriff's Office told me, Chief Labatt told me that he is also on standby, and we're expecting a statement from Mayor Andre Dickens at any moment now on the city's website referring to this case and what it means for the city of Atlanta.
Channel 2's Dave Huddleston. And Dave, I'll ask you this because it's a case that you've reported on extensively. You know it well. Would you say that in that room today, whether through just your view and or others around you, was there a moment or two, a set of information that seemed to stand out the most?
I think the thing that may have drawn the most questions or concern, Justin, was when they mentioned that Rayshard Brooks had the use of a deadly weapon, and he had the taser in his hand. So there was, I think, some stirring when they mentioned that Rayshard Brooks had a deadly weapon when it was a taser. And so I think him explaining, Mr. Skandalakis explaining that a taser could be a deadly weapon, when that part came up, I think there was some kind of hesitation about how could a taser be a deadly weapon. When it's a taser, it's not a firearm. But I think they explained if it's not used properly, it could be used as a deadly weapon. I think that's when the room here was a little bit more concerned about what they were saying regarding a deadly weapon what Rayshard Brooks had in his hand.
All right, Channel 2's Dave Huddleston. Thank you very much, Dave, for that. Now, sending it to the state capitol, and Channel 2's Richard Elliott. Richard, you've been following the legal aspects of this for 2 years now.
Yeah, and what was very interesting to me is how Pete Scandalakis, who I've known for 25 years now, when he was a district attorney in Coweta County and in Carroll County, is how he tried to separate the legal facts that he says are in the case from the mood of the country at the time. He said, remember what mood that the state and the country was in the summer of 2020, and we remember that. He said this case is not like the case of George Floyd or Ahmaud Arbery. He said this case, it's facts. The legal facts are different, but he also said we can't ignore the fact that it was happening at the same time as these other cases. The conclusion that he says, he and former Gwinnett County District Attorney Danny Porter reached from all of this by looking at the facts, looking at the video, the frame-by-frame breakdown of the video, and interviews with witnesses. Danny Porter said, my conclusion that the use of deadly force was reasonable and that the officers did not act with criminal intent. They're just about 4 minutes from now. In fact, as soon as I'm done here, we're going to get on a Zoom call. We're going to talk to a former prosecutor who is now currently a criminal defense attorney, going to go through some of those facts, give good legal analysis on Channel 2 Action News starting at 4.
Looking forward to that. Channel 2's Richard Elliott downtown at the state capitol. Richard, thank you. Briefly turning to Michael Seiden now live at where that Wendy's stood. Michael, this is a spot that brings back some really tough memories for some people in a whole city in a lot of ways.
Absolutely, Justin. Good afternoon. You know, it was here June 12, 2020, when that initial fatal encounter between Rayshard Brooks and those two APD officers, it took place. And then we all remember those pictures, that video. The following night, that is when there was protest. And ultimately, the Wendy's that used to stand beyond that fence was burned to the ground. It was later found out that investigators charged 3 people with that crime. Now, since then, family and friends of Rayshard Brooks, they've been pushing for the city to use this land to build the Rayshard Brooks Justice Center, but that plan has been stalled. And now that there's a decision, we may see some type of development. But again, it's all quiet out here right now, and I can tell you that APD, a number of the officers, they are on standby just in case things get out of hand. Back to you guys.
Michael, thank you. It has been a year since the special prosecutor got the case, 2 years since it happened there at the Wendy's. Again, prosecutors have just announced no criminal charges against the 2 APD officers involved in the death of Rayshard Brooks. We're getting new reaction, analysis, full live Team 2 coverage coming your way starting on Channel 2 Action News at 4.
Also, we'll be continuing to follow this very closely on our app and at WSB-TV.com.